to the Wine Tech Insiders podcast. It is episode 14, How We Fell in Love with Wine. A little bit of a summer podcast. We're going to just talk about where our love from wine comes, how that started, some of our greatest kind of wine moments. Not a lot of tech, but maybe we'll have a tech, how we fell in love with tech later in the fall. Okay, as always, we have our insiders with us. Laurie from Oushinery.
Hi, everyone.
Jonathan from Bottlebooks.
Hello.
And Seb from Troly.
Good morning.
All right, greatest wine memory. Laurie, when you're thinking about wine, when you're going back to all of those great memories you have, what comes to mind?
What comes to mind is I probably started drinking wine way too early, or like by North American standard at the very least. So as some of you know, I'm from France originally, and Burgundy especially. And as far as I can remember, there's always been wine at the table, which is, by the way, totally normal in France. And it's totally normal to just, pour a little sip, put a bit of water in it and give it to the kids. Obviously, like I'm no longer like that young. Things may have changed a little bit. There's a bit of a reckoning that, alcohol is not great for children. That being said, like it's, to me, like I've always looked at wine as like a social family gathering prop, if you will. Like it's rarely been like the hero of the dinner party, but it's always something that we talk about. I always remember my dad, like, oh, we go to a friend's dinner party. She's like, oh, he needs to go to the cave and see which one he has like in this, like storage in the basement, to take which wine bottle to bring. Always asking the friends like, oh, what are we eating, to bring the appropriate wine. So just like a very much like giftable, everyday and big occasion, piece of like French life, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Jonathan,
started drinking it pretty 6 years old and onwards.
Jonathan,
please don't report my parents.
the opposite experience, no? I mean, you grew up in the middle of the States and different alcohol culture.
That's very true. We didn't drink at my house. So I didn't drink until a school trip to Germany. And that, of course, was not starting with wine, but with beer. And the teacher had told our parents that, we might taste a little bit of beer if we were in Germany. But and our parents were okay with that. We landed in Germany, and the first thing we did was go out for a sausage and a beer. And I have to tell you, it was a really traumatic experience, because the first beer that I tasted, I hated. And I was like, my life is going to suck because I don't like beer. But fortunately, the next night we went out to the Hofbräuhaus, and I know there's a lot of other beers out there, but that was much better than the first beer. And so I was like, okay, things are going to be okay. But about wine though, I don't think I really got into or started drinking wine until college, probably. Again, I think the most wine I started drinking in college was when I was back studying in Germany, in Stuttgart. So drinking a lot of Baden-Württemberg wine. So I think I kind of came as an outsider to wine. And my first sort of wine experience the thing that really kind of sucked me in was meeting a sommelier who had a wine shop here in Munich. His name was Emmy May, and he was an Italian journalist and sommelier, and he was really into autochthonous varieties. And even more than selling wine, he loved sharing his wine, and he had tons of stories and really got into the details, and just had all these stories to tell about his wines. And it just made it fun, and it made it come to life. And it just had all of this personality. So I think that was really kind of when I knew I was headed towards the right industry.
And Seb, did you grow up in Quebec? Is that right?
I did. I have a bit of a shared story between both Jonathan and Laurie because I did grow up in Quebec. And Quebec, as many of you might know, all alcohol is regulated by a government body called SAQ, which basically means that arguably Quebec has one of the greatest worldwide selection of wine, right? It's a single body buying all the wine for Quebec. So it's a French-speaking kind of a province in Canada. We definitely did have wine well before the age of 18, watered down, of course. And ultimately, my very first memory of wine is more or less related to anxiety, right? Trying to go to the SAQ and trying to figure out what wine are we going to bring over to a party or a dinner, or there's so many of them. It's so complex and it's so tricky, and you don't want to disappoint, and you don't really know. And so the initial memories of wine for me are not, look, they're okay. Everyone drinks wine. Yeah, it's fine. I had boozy parties way before having proper wines. But then I moved to Australia. So I left Quebec, I was 17, and then managed my way through to Australia. And then I started doing some proper wine tasting, walking to the wineries, the wine farms, talking to the winemaker, seeing my interest. I've been brought in the back, tasting out of the barrel a number of times. And then I really started discovering the product properly. And my understanding and my appreciation of wine has changed completely, up to a point where when I went back to Quebec going, you guys don't know wine. I mean, seriously, what's happening, right? The relationship with that producer was for me a very, very important kind of aspect of sort of how I got into wine, 100%. So anxiety and then love, let's put it this way.
Yeah, and what about any of you can jump in? What about, is there a wine that you can still picture in your mind? You know, a wine that you maybe haven't had in a long time, but you can almost taste it still in your mind because it had such an impact on you, whether it was the wine itself or where you were, or.
Yeah, so for me, happy to jump in here. Like a memory, you know, like when we discuss the subject of this today's podcast episode, like something that just jumped to my head. It's not a super long ago memory, maybe like 5 to 6 years ago. And it was a visit of a Crémant cave in Burgundy. So Crémant is, okay, I'm going to be like eaten alive for this, but like the Prosecco or like the non-champagne of France, you know, so it's like a sparkling wine. And honestly, the wine itself wasn't excellent. So I'm not going to name the cave itself. But what I really loved is the fact that as a family, it was like an outing. I go back to France, you know, like every year, hopefully. So it's like really like a treat to be back with my family. And as a family to go decide, you know, visit a cave. Nobody else in my family works in the wine industry either. So it's just like really like part of the culture. And as we were stepping into this old cave, they've been doing this kind of wine for over like 70 years. And they were reusing an ancient quarry where they carve stones. And all those stones, like it's just like all the hole in the hill, if you will, like helps keep the temperature constant all year long as the wine ferment. And what was magical is like this stone, the quarry, like has been in action, like in use, like for over 700 years. And it's been slowly and surely like carved. Actually, a lot of those stones now are on the Champs-Élysées in Paris. They used to build, you know, like Paris under Napoleon Bonaparte and so on. And now like the hold up, like the hole in the hill is holding wine that I've been enjoying with my family. So it's just like, you could still see some of the mark of where the candles, or the oil lamp rather, were being hung on the wall, you know, to lit up before electricity. Like it's just, so for me, it was really like being with my family, like enjoying this product and really being anchored in history. Not just like the history of wine, but even the history of almost like human, or at the very least like French civilization, if you could say. That was really significant for me.
I would dare say it's probably not necessarily related to a specific wine, But I did, throughout the years, I did quite a bit of wine tourism, wine traveling through different countries. And I have a memory of a very hot trip throughout throughout California. And I landed myself in a winery. And when you do wine tasting at a winery, the winemakers try and have a certain variety of products, as you would all know. So usually as a customer, you don't always just love every single wine. And there's always one or two that kind of stand out. I visited that winery, and it's an old couple, and they decided not to have kids. They just dedicated their lives to the wine, and they had the dogs, and every single bottle they kept pouring, every single one of them, I kind of went, oh, wow, that's crazy. Oh, wow, that's amazing. Oh my God, this is so good. And the reason why I remember is that every single one of their wine impressed me genuinely. And the reason why I remember is that because I don't know who they are, where they're located, they didn't take my email or phone number. I have no way of finding them. And during that trip, we did like dozens of wineries, and I was never able to find that winery again. It's lost forever. It's somewhere in the hills of lost in a tiny county in California.
Jonathan?
That is a sad story. I mean, good
It's a
and sad
sad
at the same
story.
time.
Yeah, I think my most memorable probably is going back also to the story I was telling earlier. One of the wines that he had was a color that he had in his store was a Colorino, and he also had this Magnum of Colorino, and I think that was one of the most spectacular wines that I had at that point. Not that I've drinking Petrus ever since, but just to actually be able to experience the complexity, I think that was probably one of the more eye-opening wines that I had. The more funniest wine I think that I had tasted was I walked into the wine shop and was having some currywurst, and he popped open a wine, and it was a red wine, and I took a drink, and I was like, this is not just a normal red wine, and it was a slightly sparkling Barbarino, and completely didn't expect it. I had no idea that you even had slightly sparkling red wines. But he was like, this is a perfect pizza and currywurst wine, and he was absolutely right. I bought a few more of those currywurst wines afterwards.
Australia makes some really stunning sparkling Shiraz as well, and like chilled in the summer, it's just absolutely outstanding. Absolutely outstanding. What about you, David? What's your wine background? How the crap did you get into the world of wine?
Well, yeah, I kind of just stumbled into it a lot with Bottlebooks, but I grew up in Ontario, like you, in Quebec.
LCBO.
Yeah, it was a very controlled selection of greatest hits, at least big producers and all of that. But now I live in Portugal, and that's changed a lot. But actually, I think one of my greatest wine memories is we did a trip with Bottlebooks, Jonathan and I, and we were in Sonoma, at staying at Jonathan's uncle's place, and we took a bottle of Pinot to have tempura at the Japanese restaurant, and that was great. And I still try to, because it's something that I don't think about, like drinking, you think drinking sake, but somehow that just worked. And that was, I think, based upon his uncle's recommendation too. He said, grab a bottle and go here. And so that was great. And I guess, what does this mean? The wine, emotionally, like this is what is wine mean to us? Like we've talked a lot about history, a lot about discovery and friends, family, Napoleon. Is this something that are these emotions that have anything to do with tech? Are these emotions that we bring with us to building our products and to what we're doing, running these companies?
Look, I mean, if I'm going to jump in, from my perspective, I mean, I'm a software engineer, right? I actually write code pretty much every day. I do enjoy writing code. But at the same time, the product from day one, I mean, not day one in Quebec, but day one in Australia, the product really started fascinating me with my engineering brain on. The complexities and the variabilities and the amount of product. But when I really realized the number of wineries I've actually visited, I don't even count them anymore. Right? When I realized how difficult for consumers it was to get to those wines, unless you go and visit, right? We have a winery that I visited called Wombat Crossing in the middle of Pocolbin in the Hunter Valley in Australia. The Wombat Crossing makes about 400 cases of wine a year, although he's growing about twice that amount in grapes, but he just drops the grapes on the ground. So that he just makes the absolute best crazy bottles. Now, this guy, unless you've gone to visit, he's not on any bottle shop. He's not imported, exported anywhere in the world. And I can talk about him and his wines and his Shiraz. And oh my God, I can tell you how much he's running out every year. And he's just making some good shit for him to drink. But it's impossible to find. And so from an engineering standpoint, from a code perspective, I really kind of went, crap, we need to do something about this. We need to kind of figure out a way of helping that knowledge, that beautiful product, be disseminated and be communicated, right? And ultimately, it's essential because a lot of wine producers are smaller businesses. So we've talked about this a number of times before. They're not really tech savvy. They're not really on top of their website. They're not really, a lot of them do accounting in a spreadsheet. A lot of them do wine production in a spreadsheet. And that's where, as a small business, they're not really on top of their tech, and we really needed to kind of do something to help them connect with consumers, connect with the newer approach of actually selling wine. So yeah, I kind of feel like I'm rambling there.
And if I want to jump in, so for me, I don't do code. I can't write a line of code. So my I kind of wish, yes, I do kind of wish, but to each their strengths. And mine is like design, graphic design, and branding and packaging. So I studied communication in France for 4 years, 7 if you count the 4 courses, and then moved to Canada because I wanted to finally be able to speak English and get out of Europe. Nothing wrong with Europe, but I've never been outside. And my very first project as a freelance designer here in Canada was to design a wine label for a winery in the Okanagan in BC. And I just had this aha moment. I was just like, oh my goodness, I can do what I've been training at that time, like my whole life, design and work in the world of wine and get free wine in the process, because wine is expensive in Canada as well. And that was just like all the goodness kind of put together. And then after many years, 14 years or something, doing this branding and packaging, working with wineries outside of British Columbia, going California, Australia, Chile. I just really had this frustration that not having quality visual asset, photography, lifestyle images, from all that hard work that I've done, it takes months to develop a new branding system, new label, working with talented illustrators, working with printers to get all these finishes so that, you stand out, you're being remembered on the shelf for extra purchase. And that's when I came up with Oushinery. It's just oh, I don't know how to code, but I do watch a lot of movies, and I know special effects or CGIs are really becoming more and more not just affordable, but like realistic. And I mean, I've told the story before, but it's true. Like I went to see Jurassic World at the movies, and I just left and just like, oh, come on, we can do T-Rex or whatever fake dinosaurs they made up. And I do believe this T-Rex is with the actors right now. Surely we can take the same technology, apply it to the world of wine, and make accessible, no matter where you are, no matter like your case volume, you know, quality imagery, so that at the very least, like that's not, you know, a discerning factor for like distribution representation or like DTC and so on. So that's my roundabout way into stepping into tech, more by necessity to avoid the busy work. Mm-hmm.
I was going to say we need to keep in mind that as an industry, wine is outstandingly. I'm gonna take a stab here and label it traditional, right? It's one of the oldest product that's been sold or transacted on the planet, right? And as a result, technology has also not permeated. Technology has not really entered the world of wine as much as it has the world of transportation, as much as it has the world of communication, right? And so from that perspective, I think there is also a concept of a challenge where, okay, wine is not really technologically enabled. It's a really social kind of a product that we're sharing with friends and family. Yet the economy of wine, the number of restaurants I spoke to who's still kind of a call reps and call distributors and kind of check on inventory and they don't know what they're going to get. Oh, we need to change that. There's an opportunity for technology to actually change the way that we actually discover and consume and share and acquire wine.
I think that's it. It's the, I mean, and the challenge is also complexity. So it is old, but it's probably one of the most complex consumer products out there. And I think that you know, you can do a lot in analog up to a certain point, and I think that's
agreed.
And you know, the wine industry did fine before technology arrived as well. People were able to make the wines and distribute them and make people happy. But obviously the way that consumers buy wines and the way that they're marketed and distributed have changed a lot. And so what used to work before in an analog, it somehow has to be transferred into a digital. Yeah. And done in a way that still fits the way the industry works. I mean, it's none of us are doing something that hasn't been done before in other industries, right? And, but there is something in the wine industry that it's something special. It's that is enough different that stuff from outside the industry can't just be translated one-to-one in. It has to be tailored and built together in the industry.
But is that an emotion? Like is that reluctance just tradition, or is it because people don't want to lose that emotion and they're scared, or tech can't really convey that part of it?
I don't know. I mean, I have some. I mention this every now and then, that I wonder how much of some of the trends have to do with terroir and the sense of place, and the fact that in many ways the wine industry is a rather protected industry. If you look at craft beer, anybody can buy the same ingredients that you used, copy you, and if they have a better marketing campaign, then you're out of business. In the wine world, if the US drank one glass of wine more a day, there would be a global shortage of wine. So there's not this massive surplus. There's only so many certified plots of land out there that you can grow grapes on, and as long as you're able to sell the wines, you have some control over. It's not as cutthroat as perhaps other markets. I know this is not necessarily always the case in the New World. I think it's more the case in a bit of the Old World, where wineries have been in the family for generations, and you're not under as much financial stress, perhaps, but you are able to keep things going, and it's just not as cutthroat as maybe other consumer segments.
And I would flip that the other way around. I absolutely agree, right? The uniqueness of the product is also its Achilles heel. Because the wine industry, I don't feel like globally the world of wine is really moving forward with consumer demand, while technology has now entered our lives to a point where you're producing a beer and there's going to be a certain style, a certain genre. I was looking just recently at the whole craze in North America of seltzer, and the market is set to grow fourfold in the next 4 years, right? And this is a completely new product that the alcohol industry is adapting to, because the newer generation, the newer consumer, have demanded a new type of offering for quite a while now, and data is proving this. Right, so they haven't created a crazy marketing campaign or anything. They just put a product in the way that consumer wanted it. Wine, based on the fact that the product is so unique and so traditional, and we're probably going to sell it to someone who wants it. Wine, I don't feel, is adapting to that as much as it could. And I absolutely agree. The product being so special, look, it's never going to go away, right? We're never going to stop making wine. However, wine needs to up its game in order to reach consumers, in order to remain actual, in order to remain like a topic that is being discussed today. And I don't know that the industry is moving fast enough. I really am one of those who thinks, holy crap, there's so many opportunities, so many things we need to do. It's outstanding.
Laurie, could you leave us on a final optimistic thought about
Well, I mean, it's just like, I think the wine industry, though, will survive maybe a bit this crisis of identity / technology right now. It is really, like I said, mentioned, one of the oldest, ever products consumed, transacted around. It's just there's a deep seated it just really speak to the human nature in general. So I still have a lot of hope for this product, and I love it, and I love the craft that goes behind it. And then what I would encourage, and maybe there's a subject for another podcast episode, but there are a couple, there's recently a study that says that the human society / civilization may not be what it is today, as in 2021, without wine, because it helped, before even humans had the same language or anything like that. It just helped human gather and build crazy structure, even before Stone Age, even before all of that. So there's also a reason that maybe it's even almost in our DNA that we are hardwired to be receptive to that product because it does us good. It was just fascinating. I never looked at wine as a product of something that grew with us, evolved with us to make us who we are today, beyond pure enjoyment. Yeah.
Well, that was
episode point.
Oh, there you go. That was episode 14 of the Wine Tech Insiders podcast, How We Fell in Love with Wine. As always, our tech insiders, Seb from Troly, Jonathan from Bottlebooks, and Laurie from Oushinery. See you in a few next time.
Enjoy your summer. Enjoy the holidays, everyone. We'll catch you later on.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Ciao.